Hi there, everyone. Do apologise about the slight delay in starting the webinar today. Did just have some slight IT issues with our audio, but we're all set up now. So I'd just like to introduce us here. So I'm Lewis at Colesko. I do majority of the payroll here. And our sort of intentions today are to just go through some frequently asked questions. I'm joined with Rob from Sandringham Financial Partners. So yeah, we'll go over some frequently asked questions just regarding pensions. Our first sort of part of today's webinar will be going over general pension questions. Sure. And then we'll sort of segue into the upcoming budget and potential changes. Obviously, all speculation at the moment, approaching that budget, but hopefully it can shed a bit more light on the uncertainties. So we'll jump straight into it. Towards the backside of the webinar, we'll open it up to questions from you guys, and we'll take it from there. So, as a director or a shareholder of a limited company and contributing into a pension, are there any good ways of reducing corporation tax, personal tax?
Oh, there certainly is. Yes, one of the I guess perks or benefits of running a limited company around pensions is that the level of pension contribution made by a limited company is effectively unlimited.
Okay.
But from a tax relievable point of view, it is capped at £60,000.
Yeah.
So as a consequence, if you're running a limited company, and let's say typically the limited company will pay you as a direct shareholder a pay-as-you-earn salary, which is, as you're probably aware, probably usually up to your personal allowance, and then the rest of your remuneration is by way of dividend.
Yeah.
So if you, let's say, wanted to make a personal contribution rather than an employer contribution, yes, yeah, you're limited to 100% of your salary. Of course, if the company's paying you 12 grand a year, yep, that's the most you can put in a pension personally.
Yep.
However, let's say the company's doing well, trading well, pre-tax profits very good. Then, of course, what you can then do is say, okay, well, look, we're in a position here where we can actually make we want to make a larger contribution, yep, than 12k. Let's say we wanted to go right up to 60k for the year. We could do that by making an employer contribution from the limited company. Now, right, that has lots of benefits. The two major benefits, though, are I guess the most important benefit is boosting your retirement income.
Yes,
because of course you're putting more into your pension fund. Yeah. But secondly, it creates a corporation tax saving.
Yeah, of course.
So because it's an expense to the business. So it's almost win-win on that basis. And it's very, very difficult nowadays to take money out of a limited company without being taxed.
Yes.
And it's so far so good. Of course, we don't know what's going to happen on October the 30th, but yeah, it's a great way of getting money out of a company into private hands, your own hands, into a pension fund.
Yeah, no, definitely. And in terms of pension providers, there's specific pension providers that do employer only. Is that correct?
Well, there's all pension providers.
Yeah.
There isn't a specific pension provider. So pretty much any pension provider out there will accommodate employer contributions.
No problem. Really. And from a sole trade point of view, is there any benefit paying into a pension?
Yeah, no, absolutely there is, because when you think about a sole trader, yes, they're not a limited company, but of course, every pound they put into a pension, they get effectively basic rate tax relief applied at source.
Okay.
So I look at it this way. I think even though basic rate tax relief is 20%, in fact, in essence, it's a 25% bonus on what you're paying. So you pay let's say you pay £100 into a pension, the government are giving you £25 in the form of tax relief.
Yeah.
So for a self-employed individual, they're a great way of saving money. So yeah, absolutely. The same goes with self-employed, whether you're a director of a limited company or indeed in a partnership. Doesn't matter.
No, that's brilliant. And is there a minimum amount of money that I can put into a pension pot? And say I haven't paid into it before, can I start whenever I like?
Yeah, you can start contributing to a pension effectively from birth, believe it or not, because people, your parents, your grandparents can pay into a pension on your behalf.
Oh, okay.
Albeit the amounts that can be paid in are limited.
Yep.
But that can happen, and quite a lot of people with a reasonable amount of disposable income do that. But the answer to your question is typically what normally happens is when you start employment, so you start a job, you get auto enrolled into a pension scheme, and then of course your pension journey begins.
Yep.
As far as contributions are concerned, well, the minimum contribution, I guess, is the statutory contribution, which is applied, dictated by the pensions regulator.
Yep.
For auto enrolment workplace pension schemes. If it's a private pension, of course, the minimum contribution is purely based on what the provider's minimum is.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. And say I've got multiple pots from those employment sources, and one's using a different provider to my current employer.
Sure.
Am I able to merge those into a single pot?
Absolutely, good question. Yep, no, of course you are. Whether that's the right thing to do remains to be seen.
Okay.
And that's where obviously an individual should seek good independent advice.
Yeah.
But in a lot of cases, yes, it is, because when you think if you've got 4 or 5, maybe even more pension pots scattered around all over the place, from a logistical point of view, an administrative point of view, it can be a bit of a nightmare. Particularly at the point when you're at retirement, because it is a nightmare. But so amalgamating them, of course, creates good housekeeping.
Yes.
But it also, from an investment strategy, it's a consistent investment strategy. Because if you've got 4 or 5 pots scattered, you almost certainly will be in different funds, which may have different risk profiles, which aren't in kilter with how you actually feel about risk.
Yeah, of course.
So it's good to have a good tidy up.
Yeah, no, certainly. Yeah, it's and I suppose our private pensions, going back to that, are they a safe way of investing money?
Well, yeah. If from I guess from a safety point of view, pensions are personal pensions. Personal pensions are completely separate to defined benefit pensions. So your public sector pensions, your superannuation schemes, because they are protected virtually 100% if the employer fails or the pension scheme assets fail or whatever. Personal pension is very different. However, the FSCS deems personal pensions as, in most cases, long-term insurance contracts or contracts of long-term.
Okay.
Now, if it's a contract of long-term insurance, it's 100% guaranteed with no upper limit. So if the pension company fails, if the provider fails, then the individual should get 100% of their money back. But that's not the case in every single scenario. So I would suggest everyone who has a pension, maybe speak to your pension provider, say, look, if you fail as a company and the underlying assets fail, because the thing is, let's say you invest with Legal & General.
Yes.
You invest with the Prudential. What you'll do, you'll be investing. Yes, they hold the money as a custodian, but the money is actually invested, let's say, with Jupiter or Fidelity, a completely different investment fund. You will, in most cases, have total security of that, but it's not always the case, because sometimes you're limited to £85,000, which is the Financial Services Compensation Scheme limit, particularly with things like SIPs, self-invested pensions, which are slightly different. So the answer to your question is, in most cases, 100%, but not all the time.
No, that's understandable. And that 85 that's a fixed threshold, is it?
Correct.
No, brilliant. So going back to something that's not private, state pension. How do our listeners and how do we qualify for state pension?
Okay, so from a state pension point of view, the most important thing is you must have 10 years qualifying to actually qualify for a state pension. So as long as you've made 10 years worth of contributions, then you will qualify for a state pension.
Okay.
Now, the state pension changed in 2016 from the basic state pension to the new flat rate pension. So At the moment, the maximum you can obtain from the new state pension is about 220 quid a week.
Okay.
So about 11.5 grand a year.
Yep.
If you've got 35 years worth of qualifying credits.
Yes.
So you must have achieved 35 years to get the 11,500 or receive the 11,500 pounds a year.
Yep.
If you haven't, and it looks like you're not going to achieve that, you can buy added years.
Okay.
Okay. And by virtue of class 3 contributions.
Okay.
The cost, I think it's about £17 for a week for every year.
Okay.
So it's about 800-900 quid a year that you'd have to buy an extra year for if you wanted to. But there are rules around that. I think you can only go back 6 years.
Right. Okay.
If you're born after a certain year, I think it's 1951 or something like that. But essentially, it's 35 years qualifying contribution to attain a full flat rate pension.
I see. So and then retrospectively, you can buy back years up to 6 years ish.
You can.
Okay.
You can go back 6 tax years. Yes.
Yeah. No, not a problem. Are there alternatives to pensions? Would you, is there, depending on the circumstance, would you recommend a lifetime ISA? I know that's quite, it's quite a hot topic at the moment, ISAs and things like that.
Yeah,
Is there any alternatives?
Yeah, no, ISAs are a reasonable alternative, I guess, because the benefit of an ISA, of course, is that they're completely tax-free.
Yeah.
So you can, the disadvantage, of course, is you're limited to £20,000 a year per individual. I always think I've always had the philosophy that usually a pension should come first.
Yeah.
Because you're able to make larger contributions and the fact that you get tax relief.
Yeah.
And I appreciate at the other end it's taxable income, but only 75% of it is taxable, at least at the moment. 75% of it is taxable. And the thing is, if you're clever with your drawdown strategy, then you can have a good withdrawal strategy when you retire. But look, ISAs are super because we don't actually get much from the government from a tax-free point of view, from a savings point of view. So yeah, ISAs are really, really essential. If you've got that disposable income, you looked after your pension, and you want some diversification, then they're absolutely fine. Lifetime ISA, again, it's very, very good in the sense that you get that 25% bonus from the government, which is invaluable. I tend to think licenses really should just be used what they were designed to be used for, really, for house purchase.
Yeah.
And I think they're a great way of saving for a property, for first property, by virtue of that bonus.
Yeah.
But the disadvantage, of course, is that high rate taxpayers don't benefit from high rate tax relief, and you're limited to £3 grand a year, £4 grand a year with the bonus. But there's still a place for them.
Yes. Yeah. So your recommendation: pensions first, and then potentially diversify from there.
Yeah, I think that's a general statement. Yeah. I mean, obviously it depends on the individual, but in generally, Lewis, yes, we would be looking at pensions first.
That's brilliant. You alluded to it earlier. Can husbands, wives, can they pay into pensions? Family members?
Anyone can pay into somebody else. Yeah.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah. They're pretty flexible.
Is it literally making the contribution on their behalf?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, look, if you're not working, and you're at home, or indeed you're unemployed or whatever, you can still make contributions, or somebody else can make those contributions on your behalf. You can't pay more than £3,600 gross, that is. So from a net point of view, it's 2,880 that individual can pay.
Okay.
But it's good because you're actually going to receive about 750 quid off the government in tax relief. It's free money.
Yeah, of course.
It's free money.
Yeah. No, all beneficial. So in terms of when an individual passes away, what happens to that individual's pension?
Yeah. It's tricky ones. I mean, at the moment, if it's personal pension, or a SIP, if you die pre age 75, the proceeds are free of taxation.
Okay.
Now there are certain caveats to that, in the form of lifetime allowance, even though that was abolished in the budget of 2023, I believe. But there are certain restrictions, but essentially for most people, it's tax-free up until the age of 75. If you die post 75, then it becomes taxable at the recipient's marginal rate. Okay. So, and that changed. A lot changed in 2015 with the Pensions Freedom Act. Pensions all of a sudden became well, should I say, a sexy thing to have, you know, because they were a bit restricted. They're a lot more flexible than they ever were. Yes, so death benefits were one of the things that improved drastically, dramatically more to the point.
No, that's brilliant. That sort of clarifies a lot of, like I say, the frequently asked questions that we tend to have regarding the pensions. On a bit more of a speculative note, with the upcoming
the dreaded budget,
the dreaded budget, there has been talks of almost moving on to a flat rate, and the possibility of that being roughly around 30%. What are your thoughts?
I don't think that will happen. I don't think, because I think that would, it would be a bit of a nightmare from a system point of view. And it also would upset a lot of public sector workers. So I don't think that. I know that was on the cards, and I know there's been leaks to suggest that it probably won't happen now.
No, I know there's a lot of speculation surrounding it. So like I say, I thought worth bringing it up.
Oh no, it's a valid point, because you know, let's be honest. If you're paying a higher rate tax or indeed additional rate tax, you're benefiting from an uplift in tax relief. And you know, I get why they possibly want to flatten it to, let's say, 30% or whatever. You know, have a uniform rate of tax relief. But it's not going to generate that much from a revenue point of view as much as other possible avenues they could take.
Do you suspect any changes in the annual allowance? I think it's currently 60,000.
It's 60,000, I doubt it. I don't think so. I don't think they'll touch the annual allowance, really, because look, the thing about pensions is we have to have incentives to save into a pension. We have to, because if we don't save into a pension, what are we going to do? What's going to happen to the state pension? The state pension, you know, by the time 2040, 2050 arises, state pension age is probably going to be in the 70s. And you know, we run a pay-as-you-go system from state pension point of view, and you know, we haven't got the money. Of course. So there's got to be incentives for pension funding.
No, that's from that point of view, it makes sense for it. In terms of the mandatory requirements for pension and also enrolment, do you suspect any changes in the employer 3%, the employee 5%?
Possibly. Possibly. I think more from an employer point of view and a pension point of view, of course, is I think there's a strong whiff, shall we say, of national insurance contributions losing that benefit. So the tax benefit, should I say? So as a consequence, they'll be taxable from an employer point of view. So that will have a ramification or an impact on anyone who's in the salary exchange or salary sacrifice type pension arrangement, where the employer is either giving the national insurance savings to the employee. That obviously is not going to happen, but there's a possibility that could be taxable. Now, from a revenue grab point of view, that's one of the biggest. And I think, just again, my hunch is that probably will happen more than any other. I think that's the most likely. I think there will be a stop of NI contributions being free of tax for employers if they're making pensions contributions.
Obviously, again, all speculative. So
it is, it is absolutely speculative.
Approaching that. So, do you suspect any changes in the tax-free lump sum at 25%?
Well,
that can be taken out.
That's the real hot potato, isn't it?
That's the one.
It really is. It really is a hot potato, that one. Look, I think from a tax-free cash point of view, it won't be scrapped. It'd be for me political suicide if they scrap that, because that's one of the biggest incentives to save into a pension, because you can take a quarter of that wedge tax free.
Of course.
If she reduces it down to 100k, it's going to upset a lot of middle earners, and it's going to upset a lot of public sector and private sector workers. I'm not sure they would do that. I very much doubt that, to be honest. It could happen, but I would say this to everyone out there really listening and watching, is that when you take money from a pension fund, or more to the point, tax-free cash money from a pension fund, it's irreversible.
Right.
Okay, you can't put it back.
Yeah, of course.
It's come out of the pension. Well, all right. I say you can't. You can put it back if you want to, but it's recycling, so you've got to be careful with that. But you've taken it out of the pension and you've crystallised part or indeed all of your pension fund. So you've got to be very, very careful when you do that, because that could have an impact on your standard of living further down the line. And of course, once it comes out of the pension fund, it's no longer invested. It's therefore not potentially gaining the good capital growth that, on average, most pension funds will achieve over a period of time.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. Yeah, you'll be glad to know that's the end of the speculation. I know it is. Everyone's cautious of what's going to happen. With what's upcoming. So I think what we'll do now is we'll turn our attention, see if anyone has any final questions, just to round things off there. But like I say, those were some of the frequently asked questions, just for ourselves to cover. So I'll turn it to the audience. If you wanted to post your questions in the chat, or if you wanted to directly speak over, just let me know and I can add you into the chat. So let's have a quick look. We've got a Q&A here. So can contributions be backdated to previous tax year when it's not in use?
Yes, they can, by something called carry forward. So you can carry forward 3 tax years.
Okay.
Certain rules around that, but the answer is yes, you can.
There we are. So yeah, that's brilliant. Are there any other questions out there? Any burning questions for anyone? We'll just hold fire for a moment on those. But no, brilliant question there.
Yeah. And it's a very, very good way of using unsoaked tax relief.
Yeah.
Very good way of doing it, particularly for when you think about employers. So you run a limited company, you've got really good, healthy retained profits. Absolutely, you can take the carry forward facility.
Yeah, brilliant. It seems as though that is all of the questions. So thank you.
That was easy.
Sorry, one more. I've already submitted my tax return. How do I apply for that? Sorry, is that to apply? Sorry, how do you mean?
Maybe they're talking about carry forward.
Okay, is it regarding the 3 years backdated? So is there a particular application that you have to fill in? You can just contribute as and when you see
fit.
Yep,
absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, so it's as and when you see fit.
Yeah. Sorry, there's no reporting requirements to carry forward.
Yeah. Brilliant. Lovely, guys. So if there aren't any more questions, no, not a problem at all. Thank you. Yeah, I think that rounds off today's webinar. Is there any final closing points you'd like to add, Rob? Or?
I guess all I would say is anyone listening, if you're paying into pensions or indeed thinking about paying into pensions, just make sure you get good advice from your IFAs or wherever, the bank, the building society. You can always call through here and speak to me, but essentially just get good advice and just always remember that they're a really, really good way of saving money, because by virtue of tax relief which is applied. So yeah,
brilliant. Thank you ever so much, Rob,
for
joining us today.
No, it's an absolute pleasure.
And covering those questions for us. thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you.
Really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys.
All the best.